口の中だけじゃないだろう。味の世界は。お待たせしました。
Hayama Akira 選手のハンバーガー。
What I want to know is why Hayama made so much donor meat for like 4 sandwiches, maybe 5 sandwiches. What did he do with the rest of it? Should be in my mouth. So Hayama's trick was those achar onions, and after we kind of get our pan under control, we're going to be making a little bit of mustard oil to start. For this, we're going to need about 1 cup worth of oil of choice. I'm using a little bit of a canola blend, and then we're also going to need some mustard powder. Now, you can also use mustard seed, but I'm just using the powder, about 1 tablespoon worth. Take this over the stove, and we're going to start gently heating this up, and when I mean gently, you want to have it over about a medium heat. The reason for this is because this can cook pretty hard. If you see it start to simmer like this, just go ahead and turn it off and let it steep for about 10 to 15 minutes. After steeping, we're actually going to strain out all of that mustard oil in some kind of a contraption, and this is the best I got. Leave me alone. It's fine. This isn't the best idea, so we're going to go ahead and let this hang out on top of our measuring cup, and then we're going to be making our spice blend. For this, we're going to be using about 1 tablespoon worth of cracked black pepper, 1/2 teaspoon of paprika, 1/2 teaspoon of cumin, 1/4 teaspoon of cayenne, about 4 whole cloves, and then finally, the super secret chemical X is the Amchur spice. This is ground mango spice, and we're going to need a lot of this, about 1 tablespoon worth. We're also going to introduce a little bit of lemon juice for some more acidic content in this, and this is going to help with those onions later. You need 1 full lemon squeezed, or about 3 to 4 ounces worth of lemon juice. Just make sure there's no seeds in there. Give this a good whisk and bring all of these beautiful spices together. After that initial whisk, we do still have to season this with salt, and we're going to be using about 1 tablespoon worth of salt for this. Again, dissolve all of the salt in your beautiful spice mixture, just so that way there aren't any huge salt pockets. We're also going to need a little bit of ginger for this, about 3 inches worth of ginger nub, and after you peel it with a spoon or a peeler or whatever the case is, we're going to go ahead and slice this into really thin slices. You want these thin because they aren't going to break down too much, but they're going to give a lot of flavor to our spice blend. We're also going to be adding in a little bit of fresh garlic as well, and for this, I don't normally smash my garlic like this, but since they are going to be essentially giant whole pieces, it does help to kind of break them down, and you don't want to smash them too hard. Just give them a little bit of love tap, cut them in half, and throw them in. Get your garlic and your ginger all happy and dancing with all of your spices, and then add in your warm mustard oil. Make sure it's fully strained. Now bring all of this together. The mustard oil should be warm, but not hot. Give it a taste, and if it needs anything else, go ahead and hit it. I added another tablespoon worth of Amchur powder, as well as another bit of cayenne. We're going to finish this with 1 tablespoon worth of honey, just to incorporate some sweetness into it, because everything was salty, sour, spicy, and the sweetness is nice. Give this another taste just to see if you want it to be salty. You do want to make sure a lot of salt comes through, but this was really good. Now for the onions, I am using 2 types of onions. The first is going to be a regular white onion, and then also a sweet onion. And you want to cut these to about 1/4 of an inch, maybe a little bit thicker for your onions, just because these will break down pretty significantly, and I'm pretty sure Hayama had some pretty big pieces of onions. Go ahead and dump this into your spiced oil mixture, and then grab a glove and start bringing all of this together. The reason why you really want to try to do this by hand is so that way you can kind of crush the onions just gently enough to release some of the enzymes, but not enough to like make onion paste with your hands. Make sure this is all coated, all beautifully incorporated, everybody's having a good time, and then we're going to stuff this into your container of choice. I'm using 2 quart containers for this, but feel free to put this into a single container because that's actually going to benefit you later. You'll see what I mean after we get all this good on top of these onions. Once you have all those goods on top of the onions, go ahead and smash them down just a little bit to make some room because these were a little overstuffed, I admit it. Throw your lids on them, and we're going to shake these up so that way we can pop them in the fridge for, well, about a week or 2. Now you can see how much volume they've lost, so that's why I mentioned you can also put this into a single container and it's going to benefit you in the long run. Now, while our onions are getting all good, we're going to deal with the meat. For the meat, we are using both lamb and ground beef. Now, unfortunately, I couldn't find ground lamb, but we are going to be using about 1 pound of lamb shoulder as well as 1 pound of really nice ground beef. Now, since I am using bone-in lamb shoulder, we do have to get this off the bone, so that way we can give it the good old choppity chop, so that way we can kind of incorporate it with our beef. After you've removed it off the bone, if you're doing it this way, we're going to have some nice little chunkers of lamb, and these have to get processed again by hand, like we don't have another choice. I'm using the Big Kahuna knife for this just so it has a little bit more clearance, but we're going to start off by chopping it up into smaller pieces and then going all in with your cleaver, just making sure you almost essentially start emulsifying it on the cutting board, and you can see it start to really come together in this beautiful texture of lamb. Now it isn't quite ground, but it's going to be really, really nice. Now for the ground beef. This part is actually pretty complicated. You open it up and you dump it in your bowl. Now we get to actually start bringing this together. I like bringing this together by hand before adding in any spices, just so that way all of our meats are really well incorporated together. Now, since half of this is supposed to be kufta and the other half is supposed to be gyro, we're going to separate the two into two different bowls. Now for this first bowl, we're going to actually be adding in quite a few things to it. We're going to start off by doing a few small / minced onions. You can do them however you want, but you want to make sure that they're small enough to where when you cook them later, you don't have big old chunkers of onions. So I'm doing a small mince on this. Once you have your half an onion minced, go ahead and drop that directly into your bowl. And then we're going to do the same with some garlic. I'm using about 4 whole cloves of garlic for this, just getting them into a nice brunoise. And then I actually do mince them slightly. I wouldn't use like a paste or anything like this because you're going to end up losing the garlic, but a nice chopped garlic goes a long way. The last thing we're to add is a bit of fresh parsley. We're using 1 whole bunch of parsley for this, and you do want to make sure you spend some time chopping this up so that way you don't have giant leaves of parsley in your meat, because nobody wants that. Nobody wants to pick that out of their teeth. Trust me. For spices, we're gonna hit this with 1/8 of a teaspoon of clove, a 1/2 teaspoon of paprika, a 1/2 teaspoon of cayenne, a 1/8 of a teaspoon of nutmeg, and a 1/2 teaspoon of cumin before we break out the sumac. This cured sumac I found locally, and it sounded so good, and I just broke this open and it smells amazing. And since it smells amazing, we're gonna use 1 tablespoon of this sumac and 1 teaspoon worth of granulated garlic. Finally, we're gonna hit it with a little bit of salt just to start, and a good portion of black pepper. And by good portion, I mean cover the salt with the black pepper. And for our second portion, we're gonna spice this up the same way. You ready? I don't know what that was about, but we have this all spiced up. And now I like to mix this by hand for a few minutes just to kind of get all those fats emulsified. You do want to mix the other meat together just so that way that one is ready to go as well. And just make sure that they're nice and packed together so that way all those flavors party really nice. So now we have both of our meats ready to go. Paul, stop beating your... So now the one that's going to be the kufta, the one with all the other stuff added to it, we're just going to throw a lid on that and let that sit to the side for now while we deal with this big guy. And for this big guy, I had learned a technique from Rafika's kitchen, link down below if you want to check her out. She's fantastic. Take your giant meat log, yes, that sounds horrible, place this onto some parchment paper and kind of roll it out just a little bit so it's nice and even. Then you're gonna go ahead and roll the parchment paper over it, just kind of like you're rolling sausage or maybe compound butter. Get this thing nice and tight and forget that you didn't get plastic wrap. Grab the worst plastic wrap on the planet. Yes, this is horrible and I need to get some industry grade stuff. Wrap this up into a nice tight boy, and we're gonna put this in the freezer until tomorrow. So yes, tomorrow. I love you tomorrow. So now we actually have to work on our pita bread, and for this we're gonna just need a couple of things. It's not too complicated, I promise. We're gonna start off with some warm water. This is 1 cup of warm water at about 90 degrees Fahrenheit. We're gonna hit this with 1 teaspoon worth of granulated sugar, followed by 2 tablespoons worth of instant yeast. Give this a good forking, and we're gonna let this hang out for about 10 minutes until it gets all nice and frothy and creamy. Now in another bowl, we're gonna add in 300 grams worth of all-purpose flour, followed by 4 grams worth of salt. The last thing is just about 2 tablespoons worth of olive oil. You can use other oils for this, but the olive oil is going to give it a nice flavor. Now, after about those 10 minutes, hit this with your creamy, frothy, yeasty water, and we're going to start bringing this together with your spatula first, just so your hands don't get all weird. Once the dough starts getting a little bit weird and shaggy like that Scooby-Doo looking fella, we're going to start bringing this together by hand. Once you start bringing this together by hand in your bowl, and it's not super sticky, you can bring this to your cutting board, and we're going to kind of slap this around a little bit, you know, just give that dough a good slapping, just so this way we can develop some more gluten in it. After about 10 to 15 minutes worth of light kneading, this should be ready to go. You want to make sure that it's just not super tacky and it doesn't really stick to your hands too much when you handle the dough. Now go ahead and put this in your bowl and let this hang out for about an hour, and look at Lucian, hey buddy. Now after that hour, this thing should have doubled in size, and this is a big boy now. So on a lightly floured surface, we're gonna go ahead and dump all of our dough right on top of that surface just so it doesn't stick too hard. Give this a little bit of a slap, you know, bring it down a little bit, pound the dough just a little, and then we're gonna weigh this thing out. This comes out to about 500 grams, and that just means we're gonna try to get 5 to 6 pitas out of this because I want the pitas to be between 95 and 100 grams. After you've measured everything out, go ahead and tuck the quarters in on one end and then start rolling this into not too tight of a ball. If the ball is too tight, you're actually going to develop more dinner rolls than you will pita later. After you have your beautiful plump little boys, we're gonna go ahead and roll out every piece of dough first before we handle them again. The reason for this is because you do want the dough to relax a little little bit before we start rolling these out. So we're gonna just let them hang out with a damp towel for about 10 minutes. After those 10 minutes are up, let's go ahead and start rolling out our pita bread. And note to self, buy a bench scraper. Now what we wanna do is actually bring these to about 6 to 7 inches in diameter and about a 1/4 inch worth of thickness. Now we do want to do at least 3 of these to start because that's what's going to fit on my sheet tray. You don't really need to fit all of them on at once, but just a small batch at a time. This sheet tray is already heated to 450 degrees Fahrenheit, which is super important. So go ahead and flour it up, flour your pita breads, throw the pita bread on, and then pop this into the oven. This is gonna sit for about 6 minutes before we check it. Now I want you guys to look, just look at them, look at them, look at them. They should pop from that initial heat. They have to be cooked super hot. Halfway through the cooking process, so those 5 or 6 minutes, we're gonna go ahead and flip these bad boys so they can cook on the other side for another 2 to 3 minutes. Now, after they've fully cooked for the full time, the 6 to 7 minutes on one side, 2 minutes on the other, we're gonna pull these guys out so that way they can start steaming and get all nice. You do wanna cover these with a towel so that steam does stay within the bread though. Just, that's super important. Now that the tray is still hot, we're gonna do the same thing to the other pitas. Flour, flour, flour on the tray, flour on the pita, pop them back in and cook those bad boys. You can see that these are really, really nice, but I did overcook one side just a little bit, and that shows by how thin part of the pita bread is. And regardless of how thin it is, we had to try it, and you know what? This tasted really, really nice. A trick I learned at the bakery is also you could throw these into a bag to let them steam and soften up just a little bit while they're still warm, and that's what we're doing. Now we got to make that tzatziki sauce, and we're using Siggy's plain strained Icelandic yogurt for this because it is strained already. Siggy, sponsor me. I could use some yogurt. For this, we're going to use about 1 lemon. This comes out to about 3 to 4 ounces worth of lemon juice because this is a thick boy. So make sure you measure that out if you're not going to be squeezing lemons. Dump your lemon juice right into your yogurt, and then we're going to start peeling the parsley leaves. Yes, for this, I do like to peel as much of the stem off as I can. We're going to give this a good old choppity chop because we want to have this nice and chopped so that way it folds into this really well, because again, you don't want parsley leaves all up in your teeth. Now for some garlic. For the garlic, we're using about 4 cloves, and I do like to make sure I mince this somewhat well, but not enough to make it into a paste because I want those little bits and bites of garlic because it adds that spiciness. Now for the cucumber. Paul, stop playing with your cucumber. Cut this in half. We're only going to be using half of this for it. Now grab yourself a spoon and de-seed this by placing the spoon at one end and dragging down to remove the seeds. We do this mostly because there is a lot of water content in that cucumber and we don't want that in the sauce. Now start slicing your cucumber into these kind of thin julienne strips and then give this a really, really small dice. This is going to give it some really nice body within that sauce and allow us to get that really nice crunch that we're looking for. So go ahead and take all that cucumber and dump it right in. Now we're going to give this a good old fold with a spatula just to kind of bring everything together before we actually season it. We want to make sure we do season this really nicely with salt and black pepper. So make sure you season your cucumber, eat the cucumber, season the yogurt with salt and black pepper, and like a lot of black pepper. It's really, really nice here. Give this a good old fashioned stirring. I don't know why I said it like that. Then cut the other cucumber into quarters, into sticks. We're gonna take this, dip it, and yeah, we're gonna eat that. That's the good. Flip it, dip it, eat it. Nice. Pro tip, use the yogurt container that we emptied out to place all of our yogurt back into, and make sure you mark this so the waifu doesn't grab it thinking it's regular yogurt that she's gonna have for breakfast and opening it up and it's just like, why do I have this? It's that good. Now that we have the Avengers assembled, we have to start putting this thing together, and it's rock solid. This is gonna take a while. So while that's tempering so we can cut it later, we're gonna deal with the kufta version first. Now this is super simple. We're gonna be measuring these out to about 5-ounce patties, and you just wanna ball these up and kind of press them together like a meatball, and do these to each and every one until you have about 5 even patties out of this. Now we're gonna press this down and kind of shape this into more of an oval shape. You wanna shape it like this so that way it actually fits into the pita later. Remember, this shaping is super important, so that way everything kind of fits together really nicely rather than some weirdly shaped piece of meat in your bread. Now to deal with this frozen log bad boy, we're gonna get out the big cleaver for this and realize that, yeah, this doesn't cut. This doesn't even cut a little bit. So we're gonna let this temper for another 15 or 20 minutes until we can get it going. So in the meantime, throw a couple of dabs of nice cold butter into a medium hot cast iron pan. Get this all melty like and use your fingers in not the best way possible to get that butter melted. Once you have that butter nice and hot, add in 3 portions, or really however much fits into your pan, of your kofta, and make sure you season it hard.
I really wish you could smell this right now.
We're gonna end up searing each side for about 5 minutes, just until you get some really nice caramelization on the meat and the onions and the garlic, and until they're about a medium temperature. I like my hamburger medium, so you know, you do you. Immediately remove these from the pan once they're done and place them onto a wire rack to let rest while we deal with this. As you can see, I was able to shave off some of this gyro meat from this massive meat log. Just take your time with it and make sure you're cutting it cold and immediately dropping it into a very hot pan. I'm dropping it back into the pan we seared off that kofta in because it has all that flavor. We may as well utilize all that beautiful fond. When you're frying this up, you don't want to actually overcrowd the pan because you want those really nice hot sears with this meat. Remove it as it starts cooking and start flipping everything else over to kind of get that really nice sear on each and every side. You're almost stir frying this in a way in the cast iron, but it's gonna get all the meat really nice and crispy. This cooks very quickly, so make sure you're keeping an eye on it. I dropped another full batch in because this second batch looked so much better. And look at this gyro. If I handed this to you and I told you it was gyro meat, you probably would say nothing and be like, yeah bro, that's gyro meat. Now this is the exciting part. We have everything ready to go. We just need to put the sandwich together. Grab out one of your pitas and we're gonna cut this thing in half to reveal the center. You can see that a little bit of it's really thin, but that's gonna be fine. We're gonna place the meat side on the thicker part of the pita bread. Don't worry, it's gonna come out well. You see how nice that fits in there? Now stuff this with a good amount of your gyro meat. You wanna make sure you don't overstuff it because we have to add a few other things to this. Pile on a few of your achar onions, followed by as much of that tzatziki sauce as you want. And you know what, I'm being conservative about this one, but this is your Hayama Kebab Burger from Food Wars. There it is, guys. Hayama's kebab kofta achar burger that he had made. It took me 2 days to put this together, but I think it's gonna be worth it. I grew up with these flavors. Look at this bite. Look at this. Oh, I need a plate. This is gonna get messy. Just here, because I don't feel like cleaning a lot, because this place is a disaster. Oh my God. Cheers. Don't look at me. Don't look at me. You know what? I don't care if I have stuff in my beard. I can't put this down now. This is amazing. The gaminess of that lamb almost is non-existent. It's enough to know that you're eating lamb, but then the pickles kind of take over, and then the tzatziki sauce itself has that beautiful creaminess to it. Oh my God, guys, this is 100%. I'm gonna eat at least one more after this. The pita bread is fresh and fluffy. Oh. The spices in the kofta, all the herbs, the onions, the ginger, the garlic, there's so much going on with it, but it all works so well together. If you ever had anything like this, let me know down in the comments below. Absolutely love flavors like this. My name is Chef PK. Get subscribed and remember, keep playing through food. I'm out. I'm out. Y'all can do whatever you want.